Over the next few days, of course, attention will turn to the IEC's National Results Operation Center in Pretoria, Kotswane. South Africa Tonight anchor Shahan Ramkissoon is joining us now from there. Shahan, my experience in the past with elections says as soon as polling stations close tonight, 9 o'clock, they begin counting. And of course, from some time tomorrow, results begin to trickle in. The smaller towns, the villages, normally the ones that come in first, and then the excitement slowly builds up. But that's not the situation right now at the ROC, although it's busy.
Yeah, it's actually getting quite busy, Bradan. Interestingly enough, we're actually seeing some political party leaders make their way to the ROC already. I know some of them are still out at the voting stations trying to encourage people to vote. And since you lost that bird's eye view from Barry Bateman, which I'm sure you'll go back to later, let me give you a bird's eye view of the National Results Operations Center here in Tshwane. And earlier you didn't see it because it wasn't on screen, but it's up now. And that green map basically shows all of the voting stations that are open. And the green is a good thing. That means those voting stations are open across the country. I'm seeing one white blip at the top right, which you might not be able to see. But of course, the IEC telling us that they are working on the situation wherever there are problems, Bradan. But they've held a media briefing a short while ago to give South Africa an update, right? It was the first couple of hours that people went out to vote. Polling stations opened earlier on in the morning at 7 o'clock. And by 12:30, the IEC says around 3.5 million people actually voted so far. So they were very happy with those figures, especially during this pandemic. The IEC is saying 99% of voting stations were operational as well, so they were happy with that. But let's not be too optimistic, because there have been some protests that have rocked certain voting stations that couldn't open. The bad weather in the Western Cape also resulted in some delays. And the IEC is saying that they are working on that to make sure that everybody is able to actually cast their ballot. There's been some small issues, Dan, which they say they are working on. In KwaZulu-Natal, a presiding officer has been taken in for questioning around ballot boxes that was apparently stuffed into a vehicle. So they're investigating that. They couldn't give much information about that because they say police are now investigating the matter, but they are aware of it. But take a listen to the IEC's chairperson.
The Electoral Commission is very, very pleased to report that over 99% of the 23,148 voting stations opened on time to kickstart voting in the 2021 municipal elections. The Commission commends South Africans for coming out in their large numbers so early in the morning, and as they continue to come to the voting stations in their huge numbers. Many voting stations have been reported having a strong turnout from early in the day, with many voters already waiting to vote before 7 a.m. And we continue to urge the registered voters to make their way to the voting stations.
Well, Glenn Mashinini also responded to questions from journalists that some voting stations are running out of ballot papers. He says if this is the case, then action will be taken against IEC officials.
Paper running out, it shouldn't run out because we've printed 100%. So if a station had 300 people registered, that voting station would have to be provided 300 ballot papers. It's people in the distribution make decisions such as giving half and not everything, which is something that we had specifically spoken about with colleagues. Indeed, we are able to take corrective action against staff who commit acts of negligence of that nature, because it's nothing else more than negligence.
All right, so we've heard from the IEC. Let's get a sense of how things are looking on the ground. I'm going to swing my chair around. We don't do this often, Bradan, but let me do it now because JJ Tabane, a Power to Truth anchor, is standing by on the floor for us. JJ, I came across some very nervous politicians earlier. They were stressed out and for good reason. What are you seeing?
Well, good afternoon to you, Shahan. Of course, on the floor of the rock, there'll always be nerves, but not from Jessie Duarte, who I'm about to talk to. They feel very relaxed, and she's just told me not to be too impatient because the day is still young. Of course, she doesn't know my shift ends at 9, so I'm truly raring to go. So I'm going to talk to her a little bit to find out how the ANC is feeling about this election. Quite a hotly contested election, one must say. But if you listen to President Ramaphosa earlier on in Soweto, and you listen to other leaders, including Jessie Duarte, they seem to be quite relaxed about it, and they believe that they have done well in this regard. Let's hear what she has to say now. Duarte, good afternoon. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to your viewers as well.
Absolutely. How are you feeling? I mean, obviously a very hotly contested election, no doubt, but I'm sure with the reports that are coming from your party agents and so on, you can tell me something to give me a bit of hope.
Well, we think we're doing well, and of course one goes into an election to win it. So we're optimistic that we will do well. There are areas where we are just concerned about the turnout of voters. And what this election does need is a solid voter turnout. So we're encouraging those who haven't voted yet to go out and vote. Local government elections is, in a sense, much more important than a national election because it's where the tire hits the tar. That's the first point of contact with the government. And the ANC-led government has undertaken, and it's not just a promise we're making, it's a commitment to do better than we've done before. So we've scanned the country. We are in contact with all our provinces at a regional and even a zonal level. So we're watching the trends of voters coming out now. So from the morning at 11, it seems to be that the turnout is beginning to double up, which might be a difficulty for all of us if it doubles up, and that might mean longer queues. The queues in some areas are quite long. Our people are reporting that the queues are long, and of course in other areas relatively short and quick, and you're in and you're out. But we feel good. We're feeling good at the moment.
You're happy with the organization? I went to vote in Midrand, very smooth. Generally, you know, I didn't queue for more than half an hour over there. Are you happy generally with the efficiency of the IEC? There were reports just now with the chairperson saying 1 or 2 ballot ran out, but you know, truly a drop in the ocean.
Look, if you look at the fact that you're dealing with nearly 25,000 voting districts, it's not a small election. And we think the IEC has done extremely well in a short space of time. Remember, this election was promulgated in September. And the time it has required to prepare for it was too short for all of us, including for the IEC. Notwithstanding the few issues around ballot papers running out and PR ballot papers running out and so on, we think they've done well. And the IEC's integrity speaks for itself.
Because there was a big question mark, you know, the controversy around you not meeting certain deadlines to put. How did that make you feel? I mean, as a chief administrator, I'm sure that must have irritated the hell out of you.
No, of course it wouldn't make anybody feel good, you know, because at that point, your first instinct is that you're automatically losing wards. And we are very happy that the court ultimately took a decision that is in the favor of voters, not so much of political parties, but of voters' right to vote. And so it's given, and I think that's the issue here, isn't it? Is that people who have a right to vote must be accorded every opportunity to do so. So, yeah, it was a tough moment, JJ, and I knew you'd ask that question, and it was tough.
People felt a little bit, and please be honest with me about it. People felt No, the goalposts are being shifted because it's the ANC that has now not put in what of course the ANC with how many, 90 or some big number.
36 wards, but also it was other political parties as well who were, who didn't make the deadline either. So we were not alone. Yeah.
Tell me about the protest in Soweto. I mean, I'm sure you guys are concerned. It's the second time the president's going there. People are protesting about the same thing. In fact, they went to his home, ward to say we don't have electricity and water. Have you managed that situation to make sure that people don't use that not to vote and use it as a protest situation?
Well, anywhere where people are deprived of a basic service, they will be unhappy. We accept that and we understand it. But in terms of the ESCOM issue, we have made some progress. Okay. ESCOM started in Soweto with 109 units that were out of order. They left now, I think, with less than 30. So they've started to work and they are working to fix it. Of course, the major gripe is that when ESCOM switches off, it's indiscriminate. Yeah. And we think that's a fair complaint. We just hope that it isn't a complaint that stops people from voting, so that we can all work together to sort it out.
People who they still haven't voted, yes. They've got about 5 hours or so to go. Now, if there's one of them who's sitting on the fence, how do you convince them that you do better? In other words, what is the one thing you can tell me that you say the ANC on this one has learned and we will do better if you put us back into power?
Local government depends very much on the representative of the people. A person who has the honesty, the integrity and the support of the people to do exactly what the people want them to do in council. And this time around, we changed our entire approach and we asked communities to elect their own councillors. And so whoever comes in now will be a real representative and a servant of the people. That's the first point. Second point is that we are going to be very bullish in terms of oversight over our people in local government. We've launched a barometer, which is tough, and which means that councillors are not going to be able to just sit and vote. They're going to have to be very much the engine room of making change happen, and we will have targets. For example, on the electricity issue, of course, is an ESCOM problem, but we are sitting on ESCOM. I can assure you there is no letting down. We are sitting. It's quite a tough sit. I mean, we made a call. We asked for ESCOM to explain what's happening inside ESCOM. I don't think they explained enough.
We need to fire them. You are in charge.
We're not in charge. All we can do as citizens is to raise our voice and raise it very sharply with the deployee that we put in place there as a minister. Secondly, I think where we are now, and I'd like to say the protest outside Luthuli House is...
protest at Luthuli House?
Is relative to people who claim that they've been waiting for housing since 1994. But we also know that that protest is inspired by a member of the opposition who's led people to Luthuli House. Fair enough, there's no love lost in a war. But having said that, we've asked MEC Maile as well as Minister Kensani to look at this thing and to give us an answer so that we solve this problem. Backyard living is an old problem throughout the country. Many people still live in backyards, and of course the key question is how is it that they're not on the housing waiting list? And so that's the question I'd like to have answered.
This depressing you. I mean, you're about to retire soon and you still feel so optimistic. You sound so... Doesn't sometimes it depresses you that every time there is something on the table that seems unresolved?
No, there's no problem that cannot be resolved. That's my attitude and the attitude of the ANC. The question really is how long you take to resolve it and by which means you resolve it, and it must be open and transparent. And that's why we've moved in such a different direction.
Thank you for talking to us. We'll talk to you a bit later when the results trickle in.
Thank you so much, JJ. Thank you.
That was Jessie Duarte, the acting Secretary General of the ANC, feeling quite optimistic about the results and what we may expect coming out of this. We're going to walk about a little bit now and go and see whether we can find the Reverend Mishwe. Is the Reverend Mishwe here? All right, over there. Okay. Come, Reverend. Let's talk. Okay. Reverend, how are you?
I am blessed as always.
It's good to see you. Being in such good spirit. What do you think of the election so far? Often, you know, when there is an election, there's also a big question mark about is the IEC doing the right thing? Our party is happy. It's good to talk to you now before the results come out. You say, are you happy? Do you think it's headed towards a free and fair election?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Oh, no, Reverend.
Already, I don't think so.
Why?
You know what the IEC has done? In Durban, they found the presiding officer with a box full of marked ballot papers early in the morning.
You're joking.
I'm serious. Okay? Early in the morning. Which says that she could have spent the whole night
Marking the damn things.
them. Yeah. And so the question is, how did she get access to the storeroom? And the question is, do we think or should we think that that was the only ballot box that left the storeroom?
But surely, in a massive operation like this, with thousands of polling stations and so on, there will be a margin of error here and there. Did you take up this particular matter with the IEC in Durban, and what is the resolution so far?
Well, they tell you they'll come back to you. That's what they've said. They always say we'll come back to you, and many times they don't come back. But this time we are going to pursue this matter because we want to know what really happened. And this we cannot call a margin of error. A storeroom must have a key.
Yes.
It must have a security. So that definitely is totally unacceptable. And we want answers. What happened? And obviously,
We'll have to chase up and find. But finally, the people, there's 5 hours to go for people to vote. Your message to them who are sitting on the fence, or those in Cape Town who are afraid of the rain.
well, those who are still sitting on the fence, I'm hoping that they will not be influenced by that sangoma that appeared on Facebook with some members of a political party who said, you must vote for them, you must vote for this party. Okay? So they must not be influenced by sangomas. They must just know that these guys have messed us up. There are too many potholes. All things are collapsing, and so they must be replaced. So my message to them and my plea to them is, don't be confused by any sangoma. You are intelligent people. If they lie to...
But what about God? They must say, listen to God?
Obviously. Of course they must, okay? But they're intelligent people. They're intelligent people. The fact that they've been lied to for so many times, so many times, if they believe them again, they must be checked upstairs.
That I'll talk to you a little later on again when the results trickle in. Okay, thank you so much. That's Reverend Mishe over there. He says, don't listen to sangomas. I asked him, should they listen to God? Shahan, back to you.
All right, thanks so much for that, JJ Tabane from Power to Truth. He's, of course, speaking to politicians for us. It's so interesting to hear what they have to say, right? And they obviously monitor quite closely what people are saying regarding what to do, who to vote for, etc. Also interesting that we brought you live visuals from the Luthuli House about a protest, and then Jesse Duarte, the ANC's Deputy Secretary General, of course, mentioning it, saying that there is some concerns about housing backlogs, and she would want it to be addressed. Pradan, we're going to leave it right there for now, but we'll bring you more updates from the ROC throughout the evening.
Yeah, I'm sure Reverend Misha will be saying a little prayer too, as well as for his members. JJ, trust JJ to bring in the religion. They're talking to the man of cloth. Okay.